Dante wrote, "The path to paradise begins in hell." Join Deacon Don Prendergast and David Fortin as they discuss the tools men need to build the domestic church and the spiritual weapons to defend it. This is Through the Fire.
Hello, friends. Welcome to this episode of Through the Fire. I'm David Fortin, joined by my dear friend, Deacon Don Prendergast.
Hey.
You know what, Deacon?
Hey.
It's more like a brother than
yes, we are brothers.
Just a friendship, and we're going to talk more about that. That's what this episode is about. But we got some business to take care of first before we get into the show. Really want to thank the guys at Divine Mercy Radio in Hays, Kansas. Nathan and Michael, they do such a great job there. Both Deacon Don and I were recently part of their carathon, and I was interviewed for the first day, which was a Tuesday. You were there on Friday
Yes.
morning, right?
Yeah. Had a great conversation. Great bunch of guys.
Yeah, they really are. And they do a lot of amazing work there at Divine Mercy Radio in Hays, Kansas. So hats off to you guys.
Yes, we're looking forward to coming back on again. I mean, anytime you need us to converse, we'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, they were great. So anyways, that's not the only thing, Deacon. We have crossed over. We've crossed over onto a secular radio station. Now this shows.
When did we do that?
Well, a lot of
really?
Yeah, a lot of. It's not who you know. No, it is who you know.
It's always who you know.
You know what I mean?
I know. I got lots of friends in low places.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
I do, because we probably connected somehow together there. No, we are now on Punisher Radio, which is an online radio station that plays 80s, 90s.
Yeah, well,
rock.
Listen, here, let me jump in here for a second. So Punisher Radio is a product of the motorcycle club that I belong to, Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club. And you're absolutely right, Dave. It plays, the high school music that we grew up with. Those of us that are now getting a little bit gray, a little long in the tooth. Yes, they're playing 80s and 90s rock and roll.
So, but Sundays at 9 o'clock, and then Sunday evenings at 7 o'clock, so 9 a.m. and 7 p.m., you can hear Through the Fire on Punisher Radio.
Yes, yeah, that is really great. The guys are fantastic. They were really, really gracious. Hey, listen, as a member of the Punisher's Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club, as a retired New York City police officer, yeah, the life that, cops live and military first responders, the life that you live, it kind of, I don't know, it almost demands that you find yourself some coping skills because of some of the truly horrible things that you witness, you're part of, a lot of suffering. And, there's this expression, work hard, play hard. So I understand as a chaplain in the motorcycle club, I try not to be too over the top with preaching. But I do encourage my brother chaplains to keep in mind that our job most certainly is to make sure that none of the brothers go over the edge of the cliff, too far with the shenanigans. So it was fantastic when they started the Punisher Radio back up. It's an app that anybody can download. And little by little, they're giving Sunday to Through the Fire, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Deacon, that's a great way to segue into what we're talking about in this episode. We're talking about brotherhood. Over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about our boundaries. We've talked about friendships. But brotherhood is a little bit different than just a strong friendship, isn't it?
Well, brotherhood is a lot different than just a strong friendship. There's like an old expression, and we hear this every time that there's a political cycle. When the phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, what kind of person do you want to be the one that's going to answer it? And, there's a lot of truth in that. And so we can extend that. We can extend that to the circle of people that we keep near to us. God forbid if there's a crisis in my family, Dave, I know I can speak on behalf of the two of us. If there's a crisis in one of our families and either of us call each other up and say, I'm in a bad way, the response is not going to be, oh, wow, I'll pray for you. That's not going to be the response. The response is going to be, what do you need? be there for you. If, whatever I can do, I'll be there for you. That's the brotherhood. And we see that, I guess it kind of, in modern time, it kind of grew out of a military life. There's another expression. There are no atheists in foxholes. When hell is raining down on top of you, who do you have other than the guy right next to you? And that's really what you clutch onto. And then there's other expressions in the military, battle buddies and whatnot. But really, it's a brotherhood. There are people that I experienced 9/11. I was in New York City when all that happened. And so, where I was working in police headquarters, only a couple of blocks away from Ground Zero. So there are people in my life from that experience, and I'll never forget. I'll never forget those people. Likewise, there are friends that I have within the Punishers Motorcycle Club that I'm incredibly close with. Here's a shout out to my former president from Sullivan County, New York, Goots. He and I have a lot of memories together, and especially in regards to a dear, dear friend who tragically died on his bike. My best friend from the NYPD, Michael McGrath, Inspector Michael McGrath, otherwise in the Punishers world known as TAC. My former president, Goots, and I, and TAC, the three of us, we spent a lot of time together. We even got some ink. Goots and I, we have some ink to memorialize TAC. And so it's a big deal. It is a big deal to have a brotherhood. And it doesn't matter the distance, the miles. It doesn't even matter the amount of time that may have lapsed in between conversations. When you are part of a brotherhood, and that phone rings, like I said, it's not oh wow, that's horrible. It's more along the lines of, what do you need? I'm there for you. And so that's really the best way that I can describe the impact and the necessity of a brotherhood. Now, the only way that that's going to happen is when you open yourself up. You have to make yourself available. It's not going to just happen. You have to make yourself available.
Shared experience sounds like it's a real important component to brotherhood.
It is, and it's again going back to I never served in combat. I served in the military, but I was never in an active combat situation. But I know a lot of guys that have been. My current chapter president here in Florida, I'm part of the Boneyard chapter in Central Florida, and I think the reason why we're called the Boneyard is because we're all old and salty. But the current chapter president that we have, his road name is Bones, Bad Bones, and his name is Ray. And Ray is a Vietnam veteran, and he's also a retired Philadelphia police officer, and he did undercover work, all kinds of stuff. Here's a guy that has really been through it all, and he's seen it all. And so, that shared experience. And one of the cool things about being part of a motorcycle club or any organization like this, where you have that kind of shared experience, it doesn't really even, and I do mean this. Yes, there's particular honor and dignity that's extended to someone that has really been through the fire, somebody that's really been through that heat, the combat, someone that's survived having, literally hell rain down on top of you. There is a lot of respect that's given to individuals that have endured that. But with that said, there is a shared experience for anyone that's worn the uniform, anyone that's carried a weapon as part of their job. There is a shared experience. And whether it was like me, Air Force, I was an aircraft mechanic. I was a crew chief on C-5 Galaxies, and I served under President Reagan. It was the Cold War. There was no hot exchange of gunfire anywhere that I was involved in. But nonetheless, the fact that you serve, the fact that you made yourself available for the possibility of that, as Abraham Lincoln said, the full measure of devotion. The fact that you made yourself available, that by itself is highly respected. Same thing with law enforcement. I served as a New York City police officer for a bunch of years. And while I've unfortunately, I've been in situations where I had to draw my firearm. I've never been in a situation, thank God, where I had to fire my firearm. And I know plenty of guys that have. It's not something that you glorify and that you want to, tell stories and it's like, oh man, I shot this, I shot. It's never that. It's just kind of like this recognition that you went beyond what an ordinary person would ever be expected to experience. And so I'm speaking from the perspective of first responder, military veteran. I'm speaking from the perspective of public service. My father was a New York City firefighter back in the 60s and early 70s when I remember him telling me stories. They didn't even have the Scott Air Packs that everybody wears now when they go into a fire. I think my dad had told me that they were just coming online and you had something like 3 minutes of emergency air. If you found yourself trapped, you would have 3 minutes of emergency air to get out. And, my father, he had asbestosis, coal miner's disease, and, he died at a young age because of how he put himself out there for the service of others. That's the kind of thing that the motorcycle club like the Punishers, it's not a Hell's Angel kind of 1%er. It has nothing to do with that. It's a very serious and mature and sobering club that holds on to the ancient traditions and the attitude of the medieval knights and chivalry and sacrifice. From that perspective, it's an incredibly traditional kind of motorcycle club, but not this ridiculous, hedonistic 1%er type of behavior where they glorify illegal behavior. They glorify the objectifying of women. Punishers are not like that. They are a serious group of guys. The vast majority of them, cops, military, all over the country. I think we're up to something like 19 countries around the world. So this is a heck of a brotherhood. It really is. And so to be able to bring Through the Fire onto the radio platform, which anybody can download, whether it's Android or Apple, whatever it is, you just download Punisher Radio. And on Sundays Sundays at 9 a.m. Eastern, and then a rebroadcast at 7 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, you'll be able to hear this show.
Deacon, you know that I'm a part of Trace's motorcycle riding club, the Oilfield Ironmen?
Yes.
I think that Trace has really nailed it when he said that the reason for this motorcycle riding club is for one person to sharpen the constitution of another.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. That is a very stoic, ancient kind of chivalrous attitude. If you think about it, I can think about a number of instances where I'm not going to get, into storytelling. I'm not looking to do that, but let me just say that there have been moments, and I'm sure there are plenty of guys that know this better than me, moments where you're encouraging your brother who is right next to you to give a little bit more in that moment because that moment calls for it. And, the fact that Trace he's an oil worker, man, those guys are tough guys.
Oh.
The oil field workers,
yeah.
Whoa, those guys, my hat goes off to them. The amount of physical abuse they put on their bodies in order to bring that petrol out of the ground is unbelievable.
Yeah.
These are real men. These are real men that are working to the full extent that their body can produce.
They're putting it all out there in the field, and there's a camaraderie amongst them as well.
Oh yeah. Well, and what it comes back to is pain and suffering. That's what it all comes back to. As men, we are, and we've talked about this in other shows. We talked about, and I know when I was interviewed on Divine Mercy Radio out in Kansas, we were talking about the curse of Adam and the curse of Eve. And the curse of Adam, as we were talking about it, is Adam fell into the sin of effeminacy and irresponsibility. So what is effeminacy? Effeminacy is when a man neglects that which is hard, when he neglects the hard things that he has to do and relegates that to other people. Sadly, a lot of times it gets relegated to whoever the woman is in his life. You know, when you have, instead of the guy going out and working a second job and all of that, you know, it's like, okay, well, sweetheart, I need you to get a second job because I'm just tired. You know, and I mean, that seems like a kind of a mild example. But, you know, when the man is not willing to do what is hard, when he's not willing to put himself out there, that is effeminacy and irresponsibility. And we saw this in the story in Genesis where Eve was the one that had the conversation with the devil. And so Adam just relegated to Eve leadership. She's the one that handed the fruit to Adam. So in that moment, he relegated leadership. He should have been the one basically saying to Eve, hold on a second. God created you to support me. God did not create you to be head over me. So you should be following my lead and supporting me. And then irresponsibility. When finally God comes into the garden and says, where are you? Mm-hmm. As we talked about, I think this was our first
episode one. Yeah.
Episode 1. You know, God comes into the garden and obviously God knows what's going on. I mean, he's God. Comes into the garden and he says, where are you? He's not asking about their GPS location. He's saying, where are you now in relationship to me? What's going on here? And what does Adam do? Oh, the woman you put here with me. Right. Okay. Skirting responsibility. So that's the curse of Adam, which so many in modern times, we see it play out where men are not stepping up and saying what needs to be said and doing what needs to be done.
And not knowing your gender, being confused about your gender, that does not help.
So now we take it to the fullest extreme, right? We take the curse of Adam to the fullest extreme, and then you go ahead and you incorporate the curse of Eve. So what is the curse of Eve? The curse of Eve is the desire to be in control of the man that's in your life. And so when Eve sinned, she sinned in 2 ways. Number one, she stepped out of the authority of her husband, and she also stepped out of the authority of God. So she's supposed to be there to support Adam. Yeah. She steps out of that authority, and she allowed herself to fall into that temptation, and she took the fruit from the tree, stepped out of the authority of God. So we see now in modern time, absolutely the perfection of the curse of Eve is the postmodern feminist movement, where women are, you know, and men for that matter, with this expression of transgenderism and men. I mean, can you imagine a more complete expression of effeminacy than a man that wants to be known as a woman? Can you think of anything more full of effeminacy than that? And to take advantage and not take responsibility. You know, we see that play out in the news. Yeah. And all of that is an absolute disordered expression of how God created humanity to live and function with each other.
Brotherhood is not possible in a situation like that.
Oh, how can it be? How can it be? And so we have to talk about this also, is the nonsense of toxic masculinity. And I know, Dave, you and I, we've talked about the idea of, well, you one of the pet projects that you have is you'd love to be able to put together a toxic masculinity tour and have a group of guys like us go around to various states and various men's groups and talk about, hey, brothers, you got to step up. You got to pull yourself up from your bootstrap and just recognize the cards that you have dealt to you, whether they're good, bad, or otherwise, and just live it. Live it as best you can. But that brotherhood that I was talking about a little while ago, we see that play out more effectively than in any other way when we're dealing with shared pain. When there's a quest, you know, and I'm using language from, like, you know, the days of King Arthur. But really, if you think about the men that have a mission, men that have a quest, men that have a goal, a shared goal, and in order to reach that, you've got to go through the fire. You've got to slay the dragon. You have to climb the mountain. You have to ride and through the rain and the storms and the night. And you do it in a shared experience. Now you have something to rally around not only the goal of what you were seeking, but the pilgrimage along the way.
That commonality of direction it seems like it's really, really important, and to be united in that common goal.
Oh, absolutely. And this is why, we've talked about this before, Dave, how it's so important that all men need to be involved and associated with other men. We have to do that. If we try to live this life, if we try to experience all this and live this life in isolation, we are guaranteed to fail. Guaranteed. We're going to fail if we stay in isolation. Because it's in isolation, that's when the devil really wants to get a hold of you, and the devil is going to start whispering things in your mind, start bringing up the past of when you fell rather than when you got back up. Venerable Archbishop Fulton Sheen, beautiful man, wonderful, wonderful Catholic bishop. He would give all kinds of talks about this very topic that we're speaking on. He had a TV show that was very, very popular.
Award-winning. An award-winning TV
he won
show.
Emmy Awards.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Catholic bishop giving lessons on how to live as Catholic men and women, how to live as a family?
In the 50s.
In the 50s, winning Emmy Awards. And the cool thing about it is there is no way that what he talked about would ring true if it didn't touch the reality of how we're called to live. It was so profound. His show was so moving that it would run opposite a very well-known, popular variety show. Back in the 50s, they would have all these variety shows that grew out of the days of vaudeville and all of that. And there was a very, very well-known comedian, Milton Berle, who had a variety show. And Milton Berle had an hour-long show. Fulton Sheen had an hour-long show. And Fulton Sheen, his show, which was called Life is Worth Living, it would overlap by a half hour into the Milton Berle variety show. Archbishop Fulton Sheen was so popular. His message was so strong, and it resonated with so many families, so many people, that when his show ended, which was halfway through the Milton Berle variety show, Milton Berle, now you got to remember, TV was live back then. It wasn't pre-recorded. It was live TV. But it was so popular that Milton Berle was known to stop his show, interrupt his program, specifically to welcome all of the Fulton Sheen viewers who now switched the dial over and joined the Milton Berle show. That's how popular and how powerful the message is. And it's the same message, Dave, that we're talking about right now. When you live a life of purpose, and for us men, we need a mission. We need a quest. We need a purpose. And we need to do that in cooperation with other men, like-minded men, men who have similar values. We don't necessarily have to isolate ourselves to only Catholics, but at the very least, we should be involved with other men who are seeking to live a life of virtue.
And that's what we hope to do with Punisher Radio, because it is our first crossover station into a secular, it's not even a Christian radio station. This is a secular radio station.
Oh, yeah, rock and roll.
Yeah. So this is kind of like what we're hoping to do, is to be able to give that message and cross that message over. And I'm sure that there's going to be guys that are going to be listening to it because, like St. Augustine said, my heart is restless until it rests in you.
Yes. And you know what? And for the guys that are listening right now, I'm just going to come out and say it. And I know, Dave, we've talked about this, and I know you're going to support what I'm going to say. At no time are we going to say, oh, you guys got to stop playing Led Zeppelin. You got to stop playing, Ozzy Osbourne or Pink Floyd, or you got to stop playing, whatever, Metallica. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that at all, because it's not up to us. It's not up to me. What I am going to say is on Sunday, we're going to do our best to give you some programming where it will allow the Brotherhood to not only rally around the Guardian And those of you who are Punishers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Not only will we rally around the Guardian, but we will also rally around the cross. And we all can agree that we bow for God and we salute the flag. And so Punisher Radio is going to be a fantastic opportunity. Those of you who are, coming into the gray whiskers and you're looking for a radio station that is going to predominantly play the music that we listened to in high school, I'm telling you, download the Punisher Radio app. It's not going to disappoint. I think you're going to have a good time. And again, on Sundays, hopefully we'll expand the programming even a little bit more and provide some more content so that we can truly make the Lord's Day a day for all of us. And so I'm really happy to be part of that, and personally want to thank Bill Wyndham and the rest of the guys that are on the board for Punisher Radio. God bless you guys.
Just to let you know that Bill Wyndham had me record a biker's prayer that they start the day off with at 6 a.m. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah. So they do have a spiritual component to this, and they do want to build that message. So again, we are really, really thankful to them and to all our affiliates that are playing this show.
That's all the time we have this week. Tune in next week at this same time for the conclusion of this broadcast.
Hey, and friends, don't forget to check us out at www.castingthe.net, where you can find all our shows from the past and some stuff about us going forward in the future.
And one last thing. The Punishers Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club, they do a lot of charitable work. And there is no way that you can be as charitable as they are without recognizing the importance and the primacy of God above. And like I said, I'm not going to start digging deep into, religious denominations, because we have members within the Punishers that are Jewish, that are Southern Baptist. I'm Catholic. We have all kinds of Judeo-Christian denominations within the Punishers. But you cannot be as charitable as they are without recognizing your respect and allegiance and devotion to God above.
When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation about Brotherhood.
The preceding program was the Spirit of Truth Radio Arts original program for CastingThe.net.